This podcast is brought to you by Infinite Resources, a local staffing agency connecting diverse job candidates in central Iowa companies.
Amplified.
So let's start with that. So, make the 10x leap.
Right.
You wrote this book, Steve Walsh. Thank you for joining me. You're an entrepreneur. You're an angel investor. You're an author. What made you? My first question is what made you write the book?
So, let me go back. About 5 years ago, if you would have said, "Hey, Steve, you want to write a book?" I would have said, "Hell no." But I had a mentor that we did a lot of work together, and one of the things I was saying is I was seeing a lot of the things that entrepreneurs are running into. Mm-hmm. I mean, they were running into the same problems that a lot of entrepreneurs have, and so he said, "Why don't you write a book?" Mm-hmm. And then it was, okay, how does that work? Putting together a book it really humbles you in a lot of ways.
Okay.
One of the things I did is I started writing a book, mm-hmm. and I had 2 chapters done, and I was struggling trying to get stuff on the page, not mm-hmm. really thinking about how I was going to write this book. And finally, I reached out to this guy that has written 6. Mm-hmm. I said, "Hey, I'm really struggling with this. Would you coach me?"
Okay.
And he was all about it. He said, "Sure, but here's the deal. It is going to be a true coaching system, and I'm going to give you I'm going to have you done. We're going to start in December. You're going to be done with this book in August."
Wow.
And so we would have a call every 2 weeks. If I struggled with something, we went back first, looked at the book I was started writing, and we tossed it.
Oh,
he was like, that was the one thing he did. Is
Oh yeah.
That is not how you write a book.
Yeah.
It was not going to be good.
Yeah.
And so we started over again, and it was a process, like anything, like running or anything else you do, working out or wanting to lose weight. It was a process. And the process was very structured. And once you got the structure down, it was a lot easier to put it together. But I still struggled with, I had all the topics put in place, and okay, what am I going to talk about first?
Right.
And then we had it all structured. And then from there, it was about, okay, this book is, what do I want to do with this book? And this is going to be for entrepreneurs. And
right.
This book was going to be specifically for entrepreneurs that want to scale their business and weren't afraid of doing that. And because there's a lot of entrepreneurs that they have the mindset of, I can't do it, or, that person scaled their business, but it's a different business as mine. They have all the things that they say to themselves that they can't scale their business. Mm-hmm. And so we went ahead and that was how we were going to structure the book, is for that entrepreneur that struggles. And then
this is a how-to book. So when I was reading it, as I was telling you, this book is talking to me. It's telling me exactly how I feel. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the approaches is like the mindset, mm-hmm. right? How to change the mindset, right. And what types of hurdles you have and how to change those. So the more I read it, I'm like, and one of the parts of the book at the beginning is like, if you don't want to scale your book, then this is not for you.
Well, that was the
thing. If you don't want to scale your business, then put this book away. Right. Like, it's not for you.
Right.
Which is great, because it's true. Like, either you want to do it or not. Yeah. And if not, then keep reading. And if not, throw to, and if yes, read.
Yeah.
And I really like that. Sorry. ¿Por qué? Porque estoy haciendo... Huh? Oh, put the book down. Okay. Okay. So, I was like, I started to dive into it, and it just started to, I read it, and I was feeling every word that it was saying and all the fears that come with scaling. So I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into the book, and just kind of, what was the approach of going with like the mindset approach?
Well, I think that's probably the most important thing. When you do anything, I think it's the mindset. You have to get that straight in your head. And it's a matter of, I don't care what you're doing. Mm-hmm. If you want to lose, I go back to want to lose weight, grow your company, anything, it starts with the mindset. Because your mind is going to tell you, I can't do it. It's too hard. Nobody else believes in me. All the things that comes up. Mm-hmm. As you talked before, is getting in your own way. Mm-hmm. That's a typical thing that happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, and they struggle with this.
Yeah.
One of the things I would say is, in my book, I have this story, and it's a great story. Mm-hmm. One of my really good friends, he's a restaurant. He started with one restaurant, struggled. He was doing 70, 80 hours a week in the restaurant, struggling with the restaurant. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that he struggled with, he was doing everything. Mm-hmm. He didn't think that he could find anybody else to do it as good as him.
Right.
And so what he ended up doing is he had a good mentor, which two things that I believe people need is mentors and coaches. Mm-hmm. Really important. He had a really good mentor. Mentor said, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a chef or do you want to be a business owner? Mm-hmm. Obviously, he wanted to be a business owner. So he said, okay, then what does that look like? That looks like taking yourself out of the day-to-day operation, mm-hmm. finding people that are better than you or just as good as you, because you can find them. They're there.
Right. There's no way you're the only one that can do that job, right?
And it comes down to this. If you're telling yourself there's nobody as good as me, if there's not, you're going to continually find the people that are not as good as you. Mm-hmm. That's really what it's going to come down to. It always comes down to the mindset again is if you keep on telling yourself the same thing all the time, mm-hmm. you're going to get the same thing happen all the time. Mm-hmm. And so it's a matter of like shifting that idea of the mindset and changing your way of thinking. Mm-hmm. So he had to change himself to a business owner. Mm-hmm. And a business owner, what does that look like? Business owner runs the business doesn't run him. And so what ended up happening is he ended up finding people that were better than him in those specific areas. Did he have to pay for it? Yeah, but he went from 1 to 8, literally within 18 months.
Wow.
Very short time. And it was really to do with finding the right people. Mm-hmm. And that's, when I go back to the book, it talks about systems. Mm-hmm. Really have to think about how do I get systems in place? And that's how, if you're scaling a business, you really got to think about systems and how does that look?
So you have to so you're brave enough to start up a business and you have the grit to get through the first phase of making it into a reality. Mm-hmm. And then you kind of also have to be willing to go into uncharted territories.
Oh,
for example, and you wrote a book, somebody presented the idea and now it's a reality, right? You have a book.
Right.
You were talking about that you're doing some stand-up comedy, stuff so you just kind of put yourself in, is that the same mentality of it's a little bit of an unknown territory, right? Because a business owner, for example, for me, I'm how do I scale? Do I go and look for, do I do fundraising? Do I go look for investors? What does that look like? Before I know it, I'm already feeling anxious and then I'm no. Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens a lot of times is if you don't continually just move forward, mm-hmm. you kind of talk yourself out of it. Mm. And I think that's the thing is find people that have maybe they're not in your industry, maybe they're in a different industry, but have done it better than you or have done it find them and see if you can get some wisdom from them.
Mm-hmm.
I always look at it as, look at some of the people that are better than you.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have to be, it could be a book, or it could be like this Make the 10X Leap book, or it could be something like that gives you a little bit of insight, to give you like that little bit more of a spark to get to the next level.
Because there's misconceptions, right? Like there's, you speak about how many, what types of capital you can raise.
Right.
So there's not just one way of doing it.
No. I mean, I go back to, mine's more venture capital, private equity. And I look at it as, my thing is, I want to help the entrepreneur grow the business. I'm like the biggest cheerleader, I guess, when it comes to growing a business, because if they benefit, I benefit, and vice versa. And so I'm always trying to figure out, how can I help them grow their business bigger than they are, and look bigger than they are right now. Because a lot of times what happens with entrepreneurs is they're so in the weeds. That is one of the biggest problems, that they don't see what could be possible and what could be bigger than where they're at now. Because a lot of times, they keep on telling themselves, I go back to the small business mentality. I look at it as like, a small business. Well, why can't you be a big business? What is it going to take to be a bigger business than that? And so, do you want to be a small business? Great, that's fine. But if you want to scale the business to get to the next level, let's see what does that take?
Let's talk about this, the DNA success formula that you mentioned on your book.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering if you would be up for like using me as like in real life, like real time, of what conversation we would have for you to figure out where I'm at and what my next steps are.
Sure.
Not literally role playing, like actual real life. Let's see where the conversation goes.
Yeah.
So tell me about that DNA success formula.
I think the one thing is, when I was looking at it, it's funny, I was at the gym and that was up there. It was DNA, and it was the discipline that you have to actually scale the business. That's a matter of, I think sometimes people look at it as like, what's that mean, discipline? Well, a lot of times what happens is an entrepreneur will start going one direction, and then they start seeing a shiny object that they think something's better over there. So they go over that direction, and then it slows them down. So you need to have the discipline to actually bring yourself back to what you're actually doing. And then, I think the no excuse mindset. No excuses. So it's easy for us to say, I go back to the gym, it's raining outside. I can't go running, or I can't, whatever. It's the same thing. No excuses, to like today, I can't get this customer because it's, for whatever reason, the customer's not there, whatever. I can't call on this customer. Well, there's 10 other customers that down the street you could probably call on. But it's that no excuse mindset that you have to put yourself into. And then it's on top of that, after that, it's taking action. What's that action? The action could be as simple as I have to find one new employee, the employee to replace me. Or I have to find a different, maybe we're pivoting, maybe we're going to a different direction in our business model. One of the things you look at. But it's a matter of how do I put that in action? How do I get going? Just moving forward.
Right. Decide, act, and then whether that's a good decision or bad decision, at least you have a new problem now, right?
Well, there's that.
So DNA, distraction or no distraction.
Discipline.
Discipline.
Yeah.
Discipline to stay focused.
Stay focused. And, I think put it this way. What is your end game? Everybody has an end game. Where do you want to be, where do you see your company be? If you're thinking, let's say, okay, I want to be a $5 million company, whatever revenue. Well, 5 million is probably a small for you. It could be small.
Mm-hmm.
So make it big enough that it's actually kind of crazy that, if you hit that number, it's unbelievable. But still attainable. I mean, it's still attainable number.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why I look at it as you got to have the discipline to do some of the hard stuff.
So why do you think that a lot of entrepreneurs are like serial entrepreneurs? Why must it be like many things? And it's never like one thing.
Well, as an entrepreneur, we get bored. The one thing is, I will say is that if we're not doing something, we get bored. And we're continually doing the same thing all the time, we definitely get bored. And so it's a matter of like, and that's where the DNA mindset comes into play, is discipline enough that you need to. And that's where the team that you have in place, you always want to think about that as the team is important. You're just one person, but the team is, you're the captain of that ship. And so, you want to make sure that if you continually go off of different directions, you're going to lose people. That's going to be the one thing, is if you're continually changing the way, the direction it's going, then it's a matter of like, you have to give them a defined goal. Okay, this is the goal. What is our goal? We want to be the best company in our area or division or sector or whatever. That's what that could be the goal. I mean, there's a lot of different companies have different goals, but each employee should know that goal too.
And that allows you as an entrepreneur to do other things then, because you have a good team in place that is that's going towards a goal. I guess I'm asking for personal reasons, because there's ideas out there that I've been approached to do, and like some of them are getting done, and some of them are in the middle of getting started. And I wonder, like, am I getting too distracted? That it's a dilemma. It's like, am I being, if I stay just with this, I feel like I'm getting bored maybe, and that's why I'm jumping to other ventures. So I was just curious about that. If that's like, is that more of a pro or more of a con?
Well, I mean, if it's something that's completely outside your business, it'd probably be some distraction. But if it's something that's going to improve your business, I think that, if it's improving your current business, look at that as probably a benefit. But if you're doing other things that are not even in the same realm as your business, then it's probably a distraction. Kind of one of those things where look at it. A lot of times what happens is an entrepreneur sees somebody else doing something. I'm notorious for this, and they're doing it really well, and you're thinking, man, I could go over there and do just like them. But you get over there and you find out it's just as hard.
Yes.
So you didn't see what they did in the beginning to get there. And so the same thing with entrepreneurs. It's a matter of like, that's why I go back to that discipline again. You almost have to bring yourself back and not follow those shiny objects.
What about as an investor though? Because as an investor, you can invest in multiple businesses, right?
You can. The biggest problem is I like to know a little bit about the businesses that I'm investing. Meaning I have to understand what the person is about, what the company is, what the industry, a lot of the things. So if I can stay in one type of industry or one area that I am comfortable with, it's fine. Like, like pharmaceutical or something like that, investing in I have no idea anything to do with that. But
you
if
don't
I
understand the idea or the concept or like how it.
And so for me to be an expert in that area, it would take a couple of years to do that. So where I want to do is stay where I'm very comfortable, that I can invest in those areas, and then I can bring value. Because I'm always, my big thing is, can I bring value? If it's just capital they want, I'm probably not the right person for that. But if I'm one that they want to bring in people, systems, and capital, I'm the person for that.
I see.
Because I want to do is I want to help them grow. And, like I said, entrepreneurs, they can be, sometimes they're fun to be around because they got high energy most of the time. And they have great ideas, innovation. I go back to, it doesn't matter if it's a public or a private company, that a lot of times it's the same type of people, that innovation, that usually it's the two things I see that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is they have great innovation, but they have terrible marketing. I mean, you probably see that quite a bit, is that the marketing's, I would say most companies, they look at it backwards. They got to look at it as their marketing company first, and then their innovative company second. Because if nobody knows what you're about, you could have the greatest widget and it's not going to matter.
People need to know that you exist.
Exactly.
How much weight do you put on when you're deciding on where to invest when it comes to the heart and passion and drive of the people that approach you to invest? Is that a big factor, or is that some of it?
I would say it comes down to probably 75% of the time it's the people.
Okay.
And then 25% it's the company. Because here's the thing, a company, if it struggles, if it's 75% and they have a great leader, they have a great team, and they're going to get it done. And I look at it as I would say 90% of the time it's the people that is, if it fails, it's because of that.
It's because of the people.
Yeah.
Well, that makes me feel better. Because, I've invested in a karate dojo.
Yeah.
So in Urbandale, Nakata Dojo as it's called. But I'm not in operation. It's the sensei, Kenji Nakata. He's passionate about it. Karate's been in his life since he's a young kid. And when the more we talked, the more I realized that there's no way he's going to let this fail, because this is part of his identity almost. He's going to see this through. So then I felt comfortable, jumping in. Same thing. I'm in the works of opening a cocktail bar, a craft cocktail bar. Couple of friends from high school. One of them lived in New York for 15 years. He's very artistic about cocktails, and down to the ice, down to so he's gonna make his own ice, his own block of ice. And he's gonna very Japanese approach of customer service and classic cocktail bar. So it's been taking us 16, 18 months to get to this point. Same thing. It came down to, the more we talked, the more I felt his energy and his passion for it, and his eagerness to make this into a reality. And then I kind of said, okay, I can jump in on this. Do you think I'm being distracted?
Well, sometimes I look at it as those are great things. The one thing I would say is, what's their experience been? What types of things have they done in the past? Those things. And then how are they going to market it? I think, if you look at both of those industries, those are super, I would say labor intense. And what's the market? What is your market, and how big is the market going to be? So you have to look at other factors too. And then on top of that is when you're looking at all that stuff, you're talking about like the cocktail company, is it a restaurant or just a
cocktail bar?
Cocktail bar. So then it's a matter of like, okay, I'm going to invest in this. How am I going to get people there? I want to get I want people there not on just on a Thursday to Saturday. I want them there every night.
Day.
And so then it's a matter of like, what types of things can you do to get them there? And then bringing those people in, maybe that one night is karaoke night, maybe one night's like game night, another night's something else. But each night is a matter of like reach out to people and getting people in front of that group.
Right.
Because I think people like to be around people. We're if you look at right now, people are still at home. They're not going to the office as much still, but that's going to change. And because we work a lot better when we're around people versus, and so then it's the same thing is when I look at those, the cocktails are great, but that's really not the reason people go. It's usually what they want to do is they want to meet people, they want to see people, experiences, and experience is probably the biggest thing that people want, and probably more so now than ever. And I think that's the one thing you look at is creating the great experience. When I go to a restaurant, one of the things I look at it is how do I feel? It's about how do you feel when you go to that restaurant? Is the owner making me feel great when I come in? And when I leave, do I feel like, man, I can't wait to go back?
Yeah.
Same thing.
It's all about the customer. So this goes along with, and the next question is more of kind of what I think how I can help these two businesses, and this is kind of what you're doing right now, I believe, and tell me if I'm wrong, is the branding, right? Like your branding, I feel like I'm gearing towards a possible branding my name, and via this podcast, via just kind of creating relationships and getting out there. I mean, Des Moines is not a big city anyway, so it's not that hard. But how important is branding and marketing? I
go back to, like I said before, innovation and marketing. Those are the really big thing is marketing's extremely important. Look at some of the big brands. I don't care. Elon Musk's, look at Tesla. Tesla, there's a lot of other car companies out there that are electric cars. Well, they have a great product for one, but he also he's a hell of a marketing guy. That's really the thing is when it comes down to it, if you didn't have Elon Musk there, and you just had a normal guy just, selling a car, it wouldn't have sold. Not near as much.
He's the brand?
He pushes the brand. I would say that Elon Musk has his brand, but he also has the Tesla brand. And the Tesla brand is, he started one thing first. He started selling to high-end customers. His first cars were expensive, and he sold the higher end. And then obviously, kind of like you look at any of the bag, the Gucci or any of the bags like that, they sell the high-end stuff. Well, everybody wants they want to aspire to be that. They want to buy that brand. And so kind of the same thing. If you look at that cocktail bar, it's got to be a cool place to go because you want to be seen, or you want to go there because you're going to see a lot of different people there. And so I think it's a matter of like, yes, the branding is super important. What kind of brand is that going to be? Your brand is it a brand that goes for everything? I don't think so. If you look at like Walmart, Target, any of the brands, those brands, they have a different clientele. And so Target's got a different clientele than Walmart typically.
Going back to Elon Musk, he had to have fundraise, right?
Yeah, he raised money. He put in his own money. We got to remember one of the things, he didn't build that in the beginning. He ended up investing into it.
Oh.
And so then he brought in investors all on top of that, along with that.
I
So
see.
he had other investors he brought in. And that was, but I don't care who you're talking about. If you look at Apple, great marketing. They're a great brand. Look at Warren Buffett, great marketing guy. And, all those guys, I mean, are they good? They have a good product? Yes, they do have a great product. But they're really good marketing people, too.
And not to get into a political conversation, but more on the branding side. Like
Yep.
Trump is at some point he was selling his name, right? From what I understand, some of the hotels that his name is on, he doesn't own the hotels. He just rents the name, basically.
Right.
I don't know where I was going with that, but like he falls under one of those.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a marketer. I mean, I think, politically, we can have a whole conversation, but marketing is something that he probably does.
Yeah,
best.
I mean, if you look at him versus some of the other politicians out there, especially in the Republican side, he's just a good marketing guy. I think if you look at some of the things that he's done with his real estate, is he one of the best real estate guys? No, but I would say that he's got great marketing. His name is out there everywhere, and so it's a matter of like he gets in front of the right people, and he's raised a lot of money.
He's beyond where he was in the 80s and 90s, though, right? Like,
He definitely.
his name is no longer. I guess he's a politician now, right? Like his name is no longer in the real estate world. I don't think. I don't think his name is viable anymore. Is it? Like,
I think it in certain areas it probably is. I think if you look at his membership, he is a country club, high-end country club. I think it does pretty well.
Oh, okay.
Some of the things, I don't think his name's on the country club, but he's associated with it.
Oh, okay.
But some of the real estate, Trump Tower, you think of that, when you go to some areas like New York, people are going to remember that.
It's kind of synonymous with
Yeah.
luxury. Is that
Yeah,
that was the
that's
ultimate,
kinda- I mean,
the ultimate goal?
Right. Yeah. His always was a luxury brand. Look at some of the top high net worth investors out there. They invested in a lot of luxury brands, and look at what they've done. And you follow them, and I go back to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's done really well with investing, and he's stayed in his lane. He's where he was. He understands a lot of the products that he's invested in. Dairy Queen, Coca-Cola, Apple. Those are all consumer based. If you look at them, they're all consumer based.
Yeah.
And the masses buy them.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so let's do a diagnostics of me. How do you approach a conversation to an entrepreneur or a business owner that could be on the verge of scaling? How does that conversation go?
Well, it starts with just sitting down and figuring out where they want to go. I look at it as, okay, where do they want to go? And then I look at it as in the industry they're in. Is it possible? What is it that needs to be done to get there? So we work backwards. But I always say is, where do you want to be? That's the thing down the road. If it's something that you want to leave this to legacy, I go looking at right now, there's a big push. The next 10 years is going to be a big push on the number of entrepreneurs that are going to sell. There's this probably 58 to 75 right now that is, they're thinking about selling because it's the time they're, that they want to sell, they want to do something maybe different, or they're just ready to retire, one of the two.
Okay.
The problem is they
58% or 50.
I would say the next 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So the next, but because you got to remember, a lot of these are baby boomers, that they're going to do is, that baby boomer is going to turn over.
Yeah.
What happens with that? And so then you look at it as with those baby boomers, some of them either the kids don't want the business, they don't want to get in the business, or they don't have anybody. And so what they're going to do is hopefully they don't shut it down, but they want to sell it. Then it looks like, okay, are you investor ready? Are you ready to sell? A lot of times they're not even ready to sell. So then that's the story is, okay, what is it that you want? Where do you want to be? Because I look at that is a big push. And for the next 10 years, so if let's say you're 58, well, you have maybe you have 6 years that you're going to get that company ready. And so what's that going to look like?
I see. So the question would be do you see yourself selling in 5 years? That's when you say, yes, I can. The likelihood of investing is higher.
Yeah, I mean, otherwise, I guess the end game isn't. I look at it as, yes, it is the end game, but I also want to say is what is it that do I align with them on what they want to do? I look at it as, Iowa has, and I'm an Iowa boy. I grew up here. One of the things I would say is that I think Iowa's on the cusp of being like a really innovative state.
Okay.
And if you look at, there's a lot of, we have a really high manufacturing in Iowa, which it's unbelievable what's going on. But there's also a lot of these entrepreneurs that are in that age group. And so what I'm afraid of is that they'll leave that community, and that community basically continually is losing businesses. My idea is keep them there and bring businesses from outside to grow those communities. Because I think one of the things Iowa, I think, is a very special, we're Midwest, we're right dead center. I would say if anything, if you look at we're the hub of, we have Minneapolis, Chicago, we are literally the hub. And so there's a great opportunity for us to bring in companies and grow the communities that are able to grow.
So if I was to say, I'm looking, I feel young and I'm looking to be, doing staffing and recruiting for another 15, 20 years.
Right.
And then, for example, this podcast production company that we have, we want it to grow. We want to grow the membership. Which one of the two businesses do you see more attractive as an investor? As
an investor, the podcast is becoming, obviously everybody has a podcast.
Yes.
And it's still, if you're doing it the right way, there's a lot of things that you can use for podcasts. Companies, I think video is becoming more and more of people are looking at video more so than anything else.
Yeah.
If you look at like TikTok and, people like to see short reels. They don't like to see long stuff anymore, it seems like. But so that I would say that, if you look at this, it's an industry, I think, that it can grow pretty well. And I think will continually grow. And I think it's a matter of video. You also do the podcast. You can take that, turn it into the short reels. A lot of the things that people are looking for.
Yeah.
To get, that there goes back to, you're a brand grower. You grow brands. That's really when you look at is you're growing a brand. Not just your brand, but companies' brands with doing a lot of the things that you're offering them.
So one of the things that I am kind of looking for is or just answers, or just like, because we stumbled into this media world. I'm a recruiter, I'm a headhunter, we're staffing for 20 years. But then 5 years ago, I started doing a podcast out of the house with Kenji, and it was only audio, and then it just evolved into, all this video, and,
Right.
We created a platform and audience. But then we decided, we need to start paying some bills, like it just can't be an investment forever. So, or a hobby. So then we created the memberships, and then that's kind of where we are. Like there's been a response, and there's some revenue coming in. But for me, it's like, how do we kind of take it to the next level and really get memberships flowing in? And that's, that's kind of where we are, is where how do we make that push to the next level?
So here's one of the things I look at is, you have a really big customer base on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
You look at, I don't know how many companies do you work with?
We vary from 30 to 50.
Okay.
Some are active, some are inactive. They just kind of flow.
It'd be a great setup to say, hey, bring in the president of the company that you're working with,
Mm-hmm.
and say, hey, this is what we help do with not just bringing in staff,
Mm-hmm.
but we actually grow your brand. We can help you grow your brand
Mm-hmm.
with the type of stuff that we're doing.
I see.
I would work on it just, 50, you have 50 to work with. And I would think that you could actually do is create something that is where maybe you do both, together for one company. I go back
like
to
a
this.
built-in, the price is built-in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I go back to this one thing. I go back to, I'm already in their building. I'm already in the business. I'm already there. So you think about it. What things can I offer them that's going to benefit them?
Mm-hmm.
This is the thing. You're going to benefit them. And I believe that the more things that you do like that, you're going to attract more customers.
Mm-hmm.
Not just for your services, but also for here. I mean, that's the podcast.
Kind of like if you have a plumbing company, and then once you're in the house fixing the plumbing, you'd be like, oh, do you have any electrical issues?
Right.
We can also help you with the electrical, or so it's doing something it's kind of adjacent to what I'm already in their business, right? I'm already in their office. I didn't think about that.
But offer them something too, is like, hey, like I always go back to this idea, like, can you offer them an audit? And maybe the audit is something that gets you there, that shows them what maybe they're missing. That this is something that we offer you that nobody else offers.
Oh, I see.
I guess if you look at staffing, I bet you there's not one staffing company that does what you do.
Yeah, they're rare.
Probably not.
The ones that I know is like between 5 and 7 in the nation.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more that I haven't run into, but like that I know.
Right, but there's probably, so you're almost in a niche in itself. You're looking at it as, if you're a really competitive industry, which I think staffing's pretty competitive, where can you go to make yourself even that much more different than anything else? And so then it's a matter like this podcast is probably the biggest thing that you could offer your customers right now. That instead of just staffing, we bring in and help you grow your customer base, and
push the brand.
So also too is this. So when you're staffing for a company, a lot of times when people come to that company, they have no idea what that company's about. They really don't.
Right.
So this could be also a tool for that, to showcase what their company's about. They can talk about what their company does, and so when you go out and reach out to people, guess what? You got something that you can actually send them and say, hey, this is a great company to work for, and this is why.
You showcase the culture via
showcase the culture,
the video and podcasting, and
very much so. So I believe that it goes one. People always say that it's really hard to get employees, and it's hard to keep employees. That they jump ship, but if you have a great culture, they'll stay.
Retention will get higher.
And so it's a matter of like, how can I help, when you say is how can I help that company become a better company, to retain, lower their turnover, things like that. You look at it that as like go in there as do an audit, say, hey, this is what we see, and then let's see if we can create something for them.
I wanted to ask you a question that was based on your book before. Thank you for doing that was very selfish of me to ask you a lot of questions about my business.
And I, you know what, I love doing that stuff because I really like working with entrepreneurs. Like I said, I like working with entrepreneurs and trying to give them ideas that maybe they wouldn't think about. I always look at it as this way. If you can kind of bring somebody in that maybe give you something, a little different perspective.
Like a fresh look.
Yeah.
Right? So like a eagle in the sky type of thing. Because sometimes we're in the trenches and we're just doing it daily. Our creativity kind of abandons us a little bit because we're trying to get through. But it's also in your book, and I wanted to ask you the impact of lack of capital.
Yes.
What are the consequences of lack of
capital? A lot of times entrepreneurs, they'll bootstrap it. It slows them down. That if you look at what's happened, sometimes an entrepreneur will have a great idea where they'll be doing something, they'll get some traction, and then they stand still. I mean, I work this company today. In fact, that is one of the biggest problems they have is capital. Well, it's not, but it's one of the biggest problems they have. And the thing is, it slows them down. They can't do things. They can't hire the right people. They can't products. Maybe they can't bring out another product, things like that. Because it's a company can be, depending on what it is, can be very capital intense. When it comes to like manufacturing, you have to have new equipment, bringing in people, that's the things you got to look at is, and can I get my product finished in time? So that's where it slows everything down. And I believe that if you can bring in an investor like me that understands your business and brings in a different look at what your business is about, and help you grow the business, that capital is well worth it. And it's well worth bringing in a partner like that.
And the consequences can be...
the consequences can be as brutal as bankruptcy, or or like you're going to be stuck the same place you are 10 years from now. The more capital you bring in, and I would say it's kind of a double-edged sword sometimes. One thing is when you have customers, when you have too much capital, they burn it and they spend it on stupid stuff. And I've seen that happen. And then you don't have enough capital. What happens is I always tell investors, and I also tell entrepreneurs, it always takes more money and it takes more time. So if you're going to think it's going to cost $1 million, it's probably going to cost $2 million, and it's going to take as much time. But so that plan for that. But that's the thing is you look at it but the detriment is that you can't get to where you want to go. Let's say you want to go to 70 million, let's say 70 million, and you're stuck at 14 million. There's a big jump right there. And there's going to be a big things you're going to have to do to get to that point. And how fast do you want to do that? Do you want to do that in 10 years or do you want to do that in 3? So that's the thing is, and can you do that in 3? That's the other thing is, is it scalable? Can you scale it that fast? Can you absorb, the capital that you're bringing in, or is that going to be too much? So those are a lot of the things, but if you're at 14 million, you could be at 14, maybe it could be at 20 million for, it might, excuse me, take you a little while to do that.
Yeah. I want to build this into like a competitor of like, at least locally, make it into a media company that is, it's a go-to for new, like alternative information. I guess not alternative, but just like information that, the register doesn't touch, or the regular channels, news and, stuff don't touch. So, so I have high hopes for this production company for Amplified. But yeah, it's just, it's been a 5-year journey so far, and it feels like we're inching closer and closer. And it's, there's a vision there, but it's, that's why when I was reading the book, I'm like, this book is talking to me directly, because I'm on the verge of deciding this, where is it going, and how long can we sustain? How long can we just grind, right? Yeah. How long can we just grind it out? And you just said it, we can be in the same place 5-10 years from now if we don't really make bold moves and big decisions.
And I think, like I said, Des Moines, Iowa in general we're innovations there, and we're right. This next 10 years is going to be a great 10 years for our state. And opportunities like you're offering customers, if you look at what they have available right now, which is doing it themselves, which you know how that is.
Yeah. Yes.
Or they can come in here and do like I'm just doing, and we can basically take this information and give it out to our customers. And the thing is, I'd say is that if you look at entrepreneurs trying to figure out ways to get in front of their customers, because obviously you want to make customers number one, and then how do I make my customers happy? I look at it as if you're B2B or something like that. I mean, what better thing to do is bring in your customer, say, hey, why don't you come in and we'll do a podcast. We're going to talk about your business. And, then you can take that and give that to them. I mean, that's a big deal right there in itself. So the idea that you can grow this business, I think it's relatively easy if you look at it.
We have to talk off the mic, Steve. But what is one of the biggest mistakes that a CEO or a leader makes, you would think?
A lot of times they are not authentic. So the idea is that a lot of times if you look at a CEO or just an entrepreneur that's running a company, your employees already know who you are. They can see right through you. And so it's a matter of like being authentic and just bringing what, the obstacles that you're running into. You don't have to share everything but there's a lot of the things that if you bring it to the employees, they'll understand. And so they'll maybe look at you in a different way as more of a leader than not. And then give the people the opportunity to prove themselves. A lot of times leaders like, oh, they can't do it, so I'm going to just do it. Okay. Well, the problem is you continually do that. Guess what? They're not going to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of times they tend to going to be always the go-to person, and that's not what they want. Employees want to be valued, obviously, and they want to be heard, and they want to be a part of something that's going to be bigger than them. The pay is great, but if that's only reason they're there, they're not going to be there very long. But if you can make them part of the company, the growing the company and doing something that nobody else is doing, and it's fun, they're going to stay.
And that just speaks volumes on how crucial culture is, right?
Culture is super important. If you look at some of the great companies, culture is probably the great leaders. They created a culture that was, maybe it wasn't the easiest culture, maybe it wasn't the easiest thing they were doing, but they were doing something that was going to be a big impact. That's, if you look at your company, you could be a great big impact for this community. That's the way I look at it.
Right. We got a call yesterday from this gentleman, and so we, on the staffing side, and our phone system, we record calls for quality. You know, if there's any complaints, we go back and listen to it, and we heard the recording, and he's just being so grateful, and you can feel his heart as he's telling us how. So he worked for a little bit over a year as a temp to hire, and then they finally offered him a full-time job, and he was just pouring his heart out for about almost 5 minutes, and we all listened to it here in the company, and it was so touching, and it just kind of reminded us, you know, that, you know, why we do it every day, day in, day out, you know, can make a difference in people's life and in families. So, you know, it was kind of a reminder of like our culture and why we do what we do. It's a rewarding job, and it's good to have that or at least help your employees find out why they're doing what they're doing. Right.
I think that's the biggest thing is if you have the employees that understand what they're doing, like that's a great example. I mean, that's probably the biggest example of how they impacted not just that person, but the family members that they probably have to support, things like that. I go back to, there was a manufacturing, it was a helmet company, bike helmet company. They had this picture, and a lot of the employees had this picture of this guy with a helmet that was broken, but he had a story, and that story said that, hey, thanks for saving my life. And all the employees understood now what they were doing for that company. Yeah. So that's where I go back to the same thing is, you know, if you can give the employees value like that, they'll stay with you.
Right. And I heard somebody talk, and it was a great story, and it stuck with me. It said that somebody was talking and saying, you know, this is a great job that you have, and, you know, you should. And then I guess an engineer said, well, I'm just building a motor for a boat. So like, what's so cool about that? And then I'm going to make it a short story, but basically it said, look, you know, my dad, when I was a little kid, he used to come home from work, beat up, dirty, you know, and he was grumpy. He would drink and smoke cigarettes. But every other weekend, we would go to the lake and get on the boat, and my dad became my best friend. He was super happy, and, you know, he would play with us, and, you know, it was a grand old time, and it was some of my best memories are from that boat. So thank you for making my dad happy. And then so he's like, sir, you're not just building a motor, you know, you're making fathers happy. So he was able to connect emotionally why it was important for so it is important for a leader to like find that, right, in the product that they're building or services. What is it that you're doing for your customer? And, you know, at the end of the day, you can find the human aspect on that, right?
Oh, I think, you know, everybody buys typically an emotion, you know, unless it's a commodity, but typically they're going to buy off emotion. You know, if you have some sort of connection with that, like I always go back to the phone, you know, your Apple phone, you know, how often do you leave that at home? Probably never, you know, and it's super important for you to be connected and that is probably, you know, the one thing that Apple does really well is they connect that emotion. And a lot of companies are like that. Same thing. If it's a matter of like, how does that brand impact me? And you know, you look at commodities. If you're looking at it as a commodity, you need to change it unless it is a true commodity. But you know, I always go back to is if you're selling yourself based on price or there's some other generic thing, you're going to eventually, that's not going to be a great sustainable company. I look at it as, you know, Coca-Cola does really well, but here's the deal. You have two, you know, people, they're diehard Coca-Cola fans. You know, they're like, they would never switch to a Pepsi or something else. They're just not going to. But they have that connection with that. Yeah.
What would be 3 tips that you would give an entrepreneur besides like grabbing your book and
I mean, that's one. I say that the one thing. Book. Yeah, I mean, make the 10x leap. If you can get the book, I think this is one of the things is think bigger than you are. You know, I think that a lot of times is people get in the weeds and they're like, I can't do it. I can't get to the point. There's always somebody that you can copy off of, or, you know, great ideas are not a lot of times made, they're stolen. You know, I look at that as like, if you can get some ideas from, it doesn't have to be in your industry, but maybe a different industry. But don't be afraid of trying, you know, different things. And the other thing is too, is how are you taking stress off of yourself? You know, that's the other thing is too, a lot of times people are like, well, I drink and, you know, smoke or whatever. Well, what other things can you do besides that? Can you do, I go back to gym, working out of some sort, meditation. I'm a super believer in meditation. Just some of the things that you can do to bring yourself to a level head, you know, because it is, as an entrepreneur, it can be very stressful. And so
you talk about that in the book about mindfulness and because a lot of this is behaviors, right? Like a lot of this is the way we're thinking. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So, it's kind of like being here, like we are, you know, I'm present, I'm listening to you, and I'm trying to not think of, okay, what am I going to say next? You know, it's a matter of being present of where I'm at.
Yeah.
And the same way of, I think as employee, employer, the entrepreneur has to think, how can I be present today with my employees? What am I doing that is not serving me or serving them? You know, and so then it's a matter of how do I get to that place? Me, it's meditation. Meditation's, you know, you can do that. It helps you start thinking about that, where then you start noticing things that you probably never noticed before. In even your business, you know, maybe there's some things like, oh, we're doing it that way. Maybe there's another way of doing it differently. Because, you know, a lot of times in a business, we get kind of stuck in doing the same thing over and over.
Yeah, and it's it's hard because you're looking at contracts and invoices and vendor bills and taxes and you know, payroll and all this stuff, and then if you're deep into that, then when you're talking to employees, they're going to feel that, right? They immediately, they feel your energy. You might not even have to talk to them. They can sense you. So stepping back and being aware of that is important.
Yeah, and that's where the meditation comes in play. Because, you know, like you said, you're thinking about all this other stuff, and the employee comes in and starts talking to you. Well, you got to shift over to that, you know, start talking. But you got to shift your attention to your employee versus, and so you almost need to set yourself up as, okay, I'm going to work on this right now, the bills, and then let me work with the employee. You know, one of the two. You can pick or choose. It can be almost like, I'm working on this hour. Your employees know that, so they don't come in and bother you.
I see.
So it's setting up, you know, schedules about when am I doing these things. And then if they do come in, it's a matter of, okay, change your, you know, you got to change your attention to
your attention even physically, right? You have to shift
it over. It's but it is a matter of like, if you can schedule yourself to like, I'm working on this right now. Because as an entrepreneur, you know, we get kind of scattered all over the place. We're doing this, and all of a sudden we get pulled over someplace else. But if you can schedule yourself, like, I'm gonna do bills here this time. I'm gonna work with my employees. They know that come in at these times. You know, if I have just a scheduling setup where like, hey, come in at these times, and then I'll work with you, and then vice versa.
That makes you be more present and be like, this is the
so.
time that I've allocated. Like, let's discuss it, and that way you have my full attention, and not just like, oh yeah.
It's kind of the same thing as if you're home. You know, with your wife and your kids. I mean, it's the same thing. You know, how do you be present when you're there? You know, not on the phone and working with, you know, that's the other thing is too, is how can you be present with them? And it helps. That is like, it's not perfect, but it does help.
And I want to kind of piggyback on that a little bit. Let's see if we can get into some metaphysics real quick. Like, why do we do what we do? You know, like you say that you started to write the book. You're doing, stand-up comedy, or, in the process of just kind of exploring that. You dedicated your book to
it was Jocelyn Wallace.
Uh-huh.
She's an ex-girlfriend, but she was great.
Mm-hmm.
She was probably one of the, I would say, that helped me get through the book. She was probably one of the instrumental to get it finished.
Oh, wow.
I mean, she was, I would say, by far one of the best people that I know that to get me where I need to be on this book.
I mean, to dedicate it, it must have been crucial.
Oh, she was very
role
crucial to me getting this book done.
And what do you think? I mean, my old boss used to say, I used to come to him and say, be a little frustrated. This client is doing this. And then he would say, in the grand scheme of things, Abner, how big is this problem?
Right.
and I'm like, well, if you put it that way, Bill, it's not that big of a problem. The universe, and we're specks in the planet, blah blah blah. So, why do you think that we have this urge to get into uncharted?
Well, I think it's, not everybody's like that. I think entrepreneurs tend to do that. They like to push themselves. At least I do. A lot of entrepreneurs do that, where they just try to figure out if they can do something better or different than anybody else. I think it's, you have that drive that, you want to be, the where you're at now is probably not going to be where you're at in 5 years from now, or probably not even a year from now. But so you got to look at it as you have that drive to get yourself to the next level.
It feels like there's a curiosity of like discovery and exploration.
Yeah, I think
I'm curious about where I'm gonna be. That's for sure. And that's a big driving force for me. It's like, I wonder what that's gonna be like once I'm done with this process. And I also enjoy the process, which is I think not a lot. I think a lot of it's become a kind of a tacky thing, like enjoy the process, but like it's monumental to. We were talking about constructing the joke, right? Like in the construction of a joke, and I don't think people talk about that enough, of how important it is to really enjoy every step of the way.
Yeah, I think that a lot of people you go back to this, enjoy the process. Everybody forgets about that. And it's like, you're deep in the weeds and you're like, enjoy what process, this, but it is, it's enjoy the journey, I guess, because the journey never ends. That's the thing. It's never ending.
There's no final destination.
Never. I mean, it's like, you see, here's the thing, you hit one goal and then all of a sudden you have another goal. So as an entrepreneur, we have continually goals. I look at it as retirement. What's that? Why would you, because you always got to look at it as a purpose. What's my purpose? Do you have a purpose now? Is your purpose different than it is going to be 5 years from? Probably not. Probably will. That purpose is, but that drives you to get to the next level. That is your driving force. And so I continually work on that, and it's like, okay, let's make it fun along the way, at least somewhat.
Yeah. We interview some people that they 5 years later or 2 years later, they're like, I retired and I can't stand it. I need to get back to work. I can't be at home anymore.
No.
You can only do that so much.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. You can only golf and travel. I mean, I love to travel. What I like about traveling is you meet a lot of other interesting people. And I think that's the one thing that people, what is it that drives you to get to where you want to go? But you're right. I mean, retirement, what's that? I know people that are in their 90s and they're like, hell, I don't want to retire. Well, what's the point? I think that it's something that, people that's their goal, is to retire. And I think that shouldn't be the goal. The goal is like, just have a great life and have fun and enjoy life along the way. But retirement, that's nothing.
You can look at it as almost like chapters, right? But like there's not really, and I think that's a cultural thing. Is that more of an United States of America thing? Is that a cultural thing that 65 somehow is a number that people think about? And, you know,
I think they still do it over in Europe too, though. I mean, retirement over in Europe, but I think we do here, and people seem to think that 65 is the end be all, and I'm like, that could be just a start.
Yeah.
There's some people that, I think Colonel Sanders, I think he started in his 60s. I think it's
the KFC.
Yeah. So you look at that as like, you're never too old to start something.
Yeah.
Whatever that is, and people think I've always had this, well, I'm too old to start. And I'm like, you're 45.
Yeah. What?
Come on. But I'm just saying is that there's always, that comes down to the excuses you're telling yourself all the time. Get past that, the mindset, that goes back to the mindset again. It's like, what does that mindset look like? And so it's a matter of like, okay, I'm telling myself this. Is that really true? Probably not.
What about the entrepreneurial spirit? Like I've discovered that, it's a real thing, right? And how do you know if you have it?
Man, that, I think that's, if you don't like taking risk, you probably don't have it.
Okay.
I think that's the one thing is if you like a steady paycheck, insurance, you like somebody else telling you what to do, things like that, you probably don't have it. The things that I look at it is, do you want to do something? You want to create something? You want to get out there. Do you like bosses? If you don't, you're probably going to be one of those entrepreneurs that are going to do something. And you want to create something. If you're all about that, I see a lot of entrepreneurs that they think they want to have a 9-to-5 job until they try it once. And then they're like, this is terrible.
Yes. Which is interesting because as an entrepreneur, you work twice as much.
Right. But it's not a big deal because do is like, it's one of those things where it isn't a big deal because you work because you enjoy it. I think people, they look at, this idea that I have to work and then I go home and watch TV and, whatever. A lot of entrepreneurs just don't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Less TV is a bit less entertainment.
Right.
More just kind of obsessed with what it is that you want to do and get it done. So, it's interesting because I've in the last few years, when I would hear the word entrepreneur spirit, I would just I was kind of disassociated with it. It didn't click for me, but I'm like, it's a thing.
It is a thing. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. So how do people find your book?
So you can go on my website. You can go to Bison Equity Group. You can go to Amazon. I have it and Barnes and Noble, both places.
Oh, okay.
So you can either place you can go to that. Make the 10X Leap. It's a great book. And then resources, we have another chapter that's on my website, bisonequitygroup.com. Or you can reach out to me as Steve at Bison Equity Group. And or if you want to, you can find me on LinkedIn.
Okay.
So,
Steve Walsh.
Steve Walsh, yes.
One last question. What is your life motto?
Life motto. Now that is a crazy thing. Man, that's a hard one. My life motto. So I guess I look at my life as it's an ever changing. I don't think I have a model that would say my model changes. It continually changes. I would say because I was investments and I've always been an investor. But the one thing I would say is it's changed in the better. I think I've looked at myself in a different lens. And I think a life model is I enjoy pushing myself, enjoying trying to push myself to the next level. And if that's something that I can bring, entrepreneurs along the way with that, things like, exercise is really important for me. So I think that's part of my life model is that I need to have that. Mind is being, learning is a big part of my model. If you look at, if you would ask me, like I said, 5 years ago, writing a book, I would never said writing a book. I was the guy in college that says, hey, we have to get an A. If you want to get an A in this class, you have to write, 10 pages or 10 papers. I was said, I'll take that B.
Yeah, I'll take the B.
So that's the thing I look at is now it's a matter of like, it's just part of me, learning mindset. I believe that's part of my model is the learning mindset and just continually growing as I go forward.
Always in the student seat.
Always
Learning.
And the other thing is too, is you'd be surprised how you can learn something from somebody you would never think that you would learn from, I've had some great experiences, especially traveling. I that is, part of that life model is traveling is important for me. And the reason why is because it makes you think about things a little bit different in life. And the way you think and the way your employees may think, you learn a lot as you're traveling, and it's great experience. I have some great stories when I've gone on travel, on trips and met some interesting people. Yeah. And you learn from just some of the most simplest things.
Yeah. Just their existence even, right? Just like by watching them exist in their own world, you get to. I went to Guatemala for the first time in 30 years, and it was a bit of a culture shock. Even though I come from Guatemala and I grew up there for my first part of my life, 9-10 years, but still it was still shocking of the level of poverty and the way that people live. And Guatemala is beautiful. It's got money and it's also got extreme poverty. But some of my family and some of their friends, even though their economic, situation was not ideal, they're super happy.
Oh, yeah.
They're the happiest people in the world. Yeah. And, we live in a first world with first world problems, and we find time to tell ourselves that we're sad and why this and why that. And then you realize that when you're in survival mode and you got to worry about your shelter and food and, your next meal, then your brain doesn't have much other space other than be happy because you're glad to have the meal in front of you. So,
and it's super, the thing is, I think they break it, like you said, they break it down to simple life is sometimes not bad. That enjoy what they have. And I think, I think gratitude is probably the biggest thing that I'm working on is being grateful for what I have and being around people that have a learning mindset. And so, like you said, but traveling is, I like to go where the tourists don't.
Yes.
I go back to this thing is I always, when I go someplace, I try to find a guide and then take me places where the locals go.
Yes. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
It's
that's how I like to do it. Yeah. Because you get to see the real side of that area, right? And not just a resort where you're not going to Well, Steve, thank you very much for making time for us. I really appreciate it. sincerely advise anyone to pick up this book. It'll speak to you. If you're an entrepreneur, you'll know what I'm talking about when you start reading it. So, hopefully we do this again.
Yeah, it'd be great.
And thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Great. Thanks a lot, Amir. It was great. It was awesome.
Thank you. And we'll see everybody next time.
Thanks.